Bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
The CINIKRADIO podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio podcast. Here your host, Cinik.
Hey, the facts are Spider-Man belongs in the MCU. Sony was delusional thinking they didn't need Marvel, and now he's back. And we, the fans, are 100% proudly responsible for that.
Igrihe.
As long as DC wants to make dark and gritty movies, they're going to lag behind Marvel in every category.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
IG, did we just forget Kim?
You guys completely suck.
This is the greatest show of all time.
That's right, and you're listening to another episode of the Cinik Radio podcast, and I'm Cinik, and joining me, as always, two people who'd rather bring you in cold than warm, Igrihe and Ryan. And on this week's show, we discuss the almost Boba-less episode 5 and 6 of the Book of Boba Fett, give our thoughts on the Batman and Moon Knight trailers, and do some Super Bowl predictions. Well, crew, it's been another week in COVID land. It's come, it's gone, so I want to take a little bit of time and just see how you're all doing. IG, what's been going on over at the Jason Tries stream, and what do you have on tap?
On Jason Tries, I spent a little bit more time streaming a World of Warcraft private server called Ascension. It's basically you can pick abilities from all of the classes in WoW and try and build your perfect character to do the kind of stuff you want to do. It's kind of fun. And then I also played some, they have an alpha for another version that they're calling Conquest of Azeroth that has 21 new classes. All kinds of neat stuff, tinkerers that build like turrets around and hit you with mines, all kinds of weird stuff. Great fun, lots of things to do. Looking at maybe streaming some other things sometime soon. I haven't decided exactly what yet, and when I do, I'll let you guys here know. But yeah, the nice thing about my Jason Tries, it's perfect for COVID land because I don't have to leave my house.
Yeah, it's amazing over there at Ascension that they're doing it better than Blizzard, who is, a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They're putting out a better game. They're making it a more fun experience. You just come along, and I think they purchased those additional classes from somebody else. I think that was somebody else's project that they bought, but they're perfecting it. And we got to wait 2 or 3 years or for another expansion to come around to get one class or one race. Speaking of awesome hobbies, Ryan, I don't think we've really talked about your 3D printing conquests. What cool things have you been working on and not sending to me or IG?
I did a Skeletor costume for Comic-Con, and there are pictures on Instagram of that. More recently, I did so I had initially wanted to build out a full R2-D2. I started printing it and realized it was going to be way too big for my place. Like when we move and have a larger place, I could do it. Right now, it's just too big and too much. So I made a mini 3D printed chopper, which is fun and a good way to test it because I can play with the lights, I can play with the motors and how it moves and everything, and the sound stuff without doing a fully 3D printed R2-D2, which is definitely on my radar. But yeah, it's just it's too big of a project for living in an apartment in New York City, but definitely one day I will.
Yeah, you definitely got to give us some pictures so we can throw them up on the Cinik various websites. We're into February and the big game is fast approaching. Last week's game was simply amazing. IG, you're a huge football fan like me. What's your pick for the Super Bowl for next week?
Well, there's a lot of things that kind of go into what I'm looking at for the Superb Owl. Like, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of good teams. Actually, well, there's 2 good teams that are in the game, and they both have strengths and weaknesses, right? The defense, especially with Aaron Donald on Los Angeles, it's really strong. The offense for Cincinnati looks really good. They've got, Jamar Chase, one of the up and coming rising superstar wide receivers. There's just a lot of good things that'll go into it. So I don't really have an emotional attachment to either team, and looking at it on paper, for me, it'd be pretty close to a draw. So I guess I'm going to make my choice based on which team has the cooler helmet. And so I'm going to go with the Bengals.
All playoff long, I've been doubting the Bengals, and every single time they come around and they find a way to win. I think the hometown advantage that Los Angeles is going to have and that offense left by Matthew Stafford, it's going to be too much for Joe Burrow, who I've become a huge fan of this season. It's going to be too much for them to overcome. I'm going Rams all the way. Listener mail every week reminds me that we've been slacking when it comes to talking about movie trailers. So the 2 that I picked out that I like the most is as one Batman lays down a cape, Affleck we say goodbye to you and hello to Robert Pattinson. As always, dark, broody, looks filled up with just about every villain that they can think of, and most of all, it's directed by Matt Reeves from the Netflix Daredevil series. Is the newest edition of this character. Ryan, is that going to be enough to get you into the theaters based off this trailer?
I really like the idea they're going for more of a noir. Like, he is the world's greatest detective. It's, it seems like he's hunting down, a version of the Riddler that's a serial killer. I like just visually how it looks so far in the trailers. The other thing that I love about what he talks about is that it's like kind of a year 2 Batman that still hasn't learned how to control his rage. And it comes across in the trailers. So I'm really stoked. I was excited, early on. I think we even discussed this, I believe, in the archives. We'll find us talking about Robert Pattinson. And I said early on, I think he's going to be good. I like the choice. And so far it looks good. So I'm really excited about the movie. I'll be there day one. I'm a big Batman fan. And like this just so far seems like it's ticking every box for me as a fan of the character. And doing it in a way that I think is going to be different enough that it'll make it exciting. So yeah, I'm fully on board.
Over Disney Plus, a new group of superheroes are about to hit the small screen, the first being Moon Knight, who's pretty much Marvel's version of Batman. Oddly enough, he draws his powers from the moon. Looks very cool. I mean, we're getting 6 episodes with a cast led by Oscar Isaacs and Ethan Hawke. Do you think Disney Plus IG has another hit?
I could argue either way based on past experience with older properties. But since Feige took over the MCU and has a hand in everything else that happens because they want to intertwine everything together, you got to look at like Ant-Man was not a big thing. Guardians of the Galaxies was not a big thing. Black Widow even really wasn't a big thing. And they've all turned out pretty impressive characters and arcs and stories. So one, putting Oscar Isaac in the seat of Moon Knight, that says a lot because like he's a very good actor and I believe that he can do this extremely well. So I am excited, even though Moon Knight is like, maybe a D tier Marvel character. He's down a ways, but he does look absolutely cool as shit. And I think it'll be fun to watch. I think they'll do a good job with it. So yeah, I'm excited. As soon as it releases, I'll start watching it. It should be a good time.
I didn't think the Hawkeye show was going to be any good either, and it turned out to be very fun and really, really enjoyable. We're getting down to the last few episodes and hopefully the first of many seasons of the Book of Boba Fett. So we're going to discuss episode 5, The Return of the Mandalorian, and episode 6, From the Desert Came a Stranger. Filled with action, deep feelings, and unexpected cameos. Ryan, was the only thing missing from episode 5, was it Boba Fett?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many memes. It's been such a big part of the discussion, but I feel like we saw, if we consider The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett essentially, part of the same like Mandoverse, these are easily 2 of the strongest episodes of that. But yeah, we didn't get much Boba Fett, and so I think there's going to be a lot of questions and disagreements as far as I'm sure we'll get into it as far as how important that was and how much sense that made. But yeah, it was like Boba Fett finally made a cameo in his own show in the last episode, which is a little strange.
Yeah, I mean, the guy was missing from an episode and a half of his own show, and there's only 6 in the season. Did the fans have a right to be concerned?
I think that they could have lessened some of the things that were going on in some of these other places, but I don't know how without, taking away from what they did, because they didn't really have a lot of dead space that didn't lead anywhere or didn't give any kind of feeling or throwback to fans. So I'm hoping that they have enough time in the last episode, because I haven't seen anything about runtime or anything on the last episode. So maybe it's going to be standard like 40 minutes to 50 minutes, somewhere in that range like the other episodes have been. And maybe they'll just leave it on a cliffhanger and we'll just have to wait and see what happens next. Or maybe they're just going to leave it on cliffhanger and run it straight into The Mandalorian season 3, and we're not going to have to wait for the next season of Book of Boba Fett. I think I'd be a little bit disappointed in that. We need to have some kind of movement before the end of this, and I think there will be. But I'm a little concerned, but not overly concerned, because these last 2 episodes were still a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, they really could have stole from the Game of Thrones playbook and bounced back and forth a little bit, so we got a little bit of Boba Fett in his own show. I mean, I don't I understand that the shows are woven together, and we're probably going to get quite a bit of Boba Fett in Mandalorian next season, because there's no way they're wrapping this whole storyline up in a 50-minute run. So we'll probably leave on some sort of cliffhanger and have to wait a few months until the next thing comes out. But we do have a lot of stuff in the meantime, like Kenobi coming up, to kind of keep us busy. We join Djarin with a bounty already in progress. Ryan, the fight unfolds in much more of a violent and drastic tone. Are we getting a glimpse on who Djarin is going to be in Mandalorian Season 3?
It was more of an extension of how he's fought to this point, where he kind of always, he's tough, but he's always a little bit in over his head. And I felt like the brutality of the fight was more of a result of him just being a little bit in over his head. He's got the Darksaber, but he doesn't quite know how to wield it. And so he's just going to do what he's got to do to win. And I think if anything we've seen with him, he can be brutal. I mean, he hanged a guy, remember, in season 2, he's not averse to violently, dispatching with people. If anything, it's more of like, what's Disney going to allow? Because it's still kind of shocking to see decapitations and cutting people in half. So it's more that maybe they're just going to give us more of that brutality and allow us to see a little bit more of it, which is nice. It's nice that, that they're not going to kind of handcuff the show and not allow us to see things that are a little more, violent and aggressive when needed.
Well, I mean, it's the cuts, right? And the fact that the lightsaber pretty much cauterizes the wound, so there's no blood. You're not getting blood, you're not getting gore. The head will get cut off, but will cut away, and, we're not going to deal with an episode of The Punisher. IG, during the fight, Mando nearly takes his leg off with the Darksaber. After seeing such a potential serious workplace injury, does it remind you kind of why Jedis receive years of training before they're allowed to wield such a weapon, and why also Daryl was so adamant that Michael never touched the baler in the warehouse?
That's a good analogy, because, all of us as kids, after we saw Star Wars the first time, like, the only thing we could ever want for the rest of our life more than anything else is a lightsaber. And as we get older, we start thinking about OSHA type things like that, where, likely I'm going to cut my own leg off with this lightsaber if I get one, but I still want one. So there is that, like, even if I'm going to lose some digits, a foot, whatever, if I have a lightsaber, I still have a lightsaber. But yeah, it's a little bit odd when you really aren't exactly sure what you're holding and what it can really do to some things. Maybe you should spend some time at least testing it out a little bit before you take it out into the wild and try and take down 12 bad guys with it.
I mean, there's that great meme where Ben hands Luke his first lightsaber, and they have a picture of him looking directly into it. Probably not something that you should be giving to kids. Ryan, Djarin finds his Mandalorian coven only to be challenged by Paz Vizsla for the Darksaber and scolded by the armor for removing his helmet. You can't choose your family. Maybe you can't choose your coven. Was it such a good idea to let them melt his spear down, seeming that a good third of his conflict come from Mandalorians themselves?
The show has done a really good job of expanding on like kind of the culture of the, different people, whether it's Mandalorians or it's Tusken Raiders. It's done a really good job of kind of building on what their culture is and teaching us about, who they are. And so, she kind of says like, if you forget the exact words, but basically that, Beskar is meant for armor, not for weapons. So I like that because, and she's a religious zealot. So if that's part of their religion, where maybe like a Boba Fett's not going to care, like she does. And so in that case, it is part of their religion and it is important to her and important to him, it makes sense. And so I didn't mind it that much.
But honestly, like he even said that the hilt for the Darksaber is made out of a type of Beskar he's never seen before. And that's a weapon and it's ancient. So Beskar's for whatever the hell you need it for.
I don't know. I love the spear. I even love the disintegration rifle even a little more, and that seems to have been taken down with the Razor Crest. I don't think he has it anymore. I personally would have held on to the spear only because it works against people in Beskar where the Darksaber doesn't appear to, but that's just me. IG, the N1 Naboo Starfighter, is a big departure logistically from the Razor Crest as far as his bounty hunter duties are concerned. And also kind of that big group dynamic, which we saw last season where they all jumped on the Razor Crest and went someplace. Do you think this is a temporary prequel callback or a permanent change in direction for Djarin?
I think it's temporary. I think it's something that gives us all a call back into the prequels, that they're trying to maybe retcon some stuff and make us all excited about the prequels again. I'm going to admit it worked a little bit. I was kind of excited to see it. It was an interesting thing. And then they juiced it up, and he could still bounty hunt. He's just going to have to do it all solo, because they took out the droid hole and put something back there so he could put whatever bounty he trapped back in the hole. And maybe he just doesn't bring anybody back warm, and he just brings heads back, and he could put a whole bunch of them in that hole back there. So, yeah, it could work, but I think it's temporary, because Mando, as much as he works on his own, he ends up latching on to people, even if it's just momentary. And that ship does not work well for even momentary latch ups to try and tootle around with people.
Well, until we get a shot of Grogu in the, modified droid hole, he's definitely got that. Like, that ship's his until we have that shot of him and Grogu flying together. So I would think it's maybe temporary, but definitely he's going to have that for a while until their reunion and, they're back together.
It's interesting you say that about the prequels, IG, because suddenly, like, everybody is a Hayden Christensen fan when they hated him in the prequels. Suddenly they love him, and it can't be more excited about him coming back and doing however many episodes of Kenobi he's doing. And it reminds me of professional wrestling. When a wrestler can't get over, all you got to do is hold them off TV for a year. And then when they come back, the fans absolutely lose it. Perfect example is John Cena has been injured and doing Peacemaker, and he came back just recently, and people lost their minds. And then Ronda Rousey, she went out, had a baby, and she could not. The fans really just didn't love her. She showed up at Royal Rumble, and everybody went nuts. I think it's just nostalgia. Nostalgia is huge, and I'm happy that Hayden Christensen's getting his due, because I don't think he's a bad actor. I think he was a victim of bad writing. Ryan, we open up episode 6 with a showdown between Four Pipes and the Marshal of Mos Pelgo. Cobb Vanth did give some serious Deadwood vibes during that scene. Are you starting to side-eye every recurring character as a potential spin-off candidate?
That's a good question. I think that's the one good thing about one of the many good things about the show has been so many of the side characters, even if it's somebody who's there for, a couple of, scenes, are all so interesting and well performed. And, generally they get pretty good actors for those roles that, yeah, you can see a spinoff. And I could totally see a Cobb Vanth spinoff. That would be, be fun to watch. Even though we got a full episode in season 2, I kind of liked, the little we got in this episode, I liked a lot more than what we saw of him in season 2. And yeah, I think that's a good point. I haven't heard anything about that, but I'd totally be in for a Cobb Vanth spinoff show if he's still alive.
Yeah, I think he only got it in the shoulder. People slowed down the shot and not only that, I mean, don't those books that you read, like Aftermath, take place after this? And he's introduced in those books.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So I think he'll continue on, and I think Cad Bane's shot was intentionally placed to wound him, but to keep him out of the conflict. Mando heads to see the little guy, and we get scenes chock full of fan service, from Luke's juxtaposition from Yoda in Empire to Grogu now. I absolutely adored these scenes. But IG, let's take a minute to talk about the de-aging technology and used to recreate Luke. Are they close to having a character like Luke possibly lead movies or a series? I mean, it's taken such a step forward even from his last appearance.
Yeah, the difference between the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian and this one, like they apparently somebody did a deep fake on the internet, and they brought that guy in to help do these ones, is what I read. And it made a difference, because it was a little bit more believable. Not that it wasn't believable in The Mandalorian, but it just looked even more like Luke and sounded more like Luke. And there were a couple of times, like if you're really paying close attention, that the mouth doesn't match up properly and things don't look exactly right. But we have to remember, like, go back and watch Empire Strikes Back. Yoda's mouth doesn't move anywhere close to what he's saying, because he's a pure Muppet. Understand this is Star Wars. Have fun with it. Enjoy it. Have a good time. And just let it be. It looks great. Yes, I think that they could pretty much permanently de-age a character. And I think the reason they wouldn't right now is cost, because every time they're in there, it costs money to do that to their face. As soon as they can automate that process where you basically pay one cost and you can use it for as long as you want, then I think that some of those things may happen.
It was done really well this time. I'm really into Luke being in this current story. I don't know which way they're going to go, but I would totally be there for a Grogu Luke series. Ryan, as the Favreau-Filoni universe grows, people have been referring to the last couple episodes of Book of Cameos, but has Clone Wars and even Rebels become must-view for any Star Wars fan at this point?
It's not quite must-view. And then it maybe goes to a little bit of a criticism of Book of Boba Fett. But I think that The Mandalorian, and I'm including these last 2 episodes as part of the Mandalorian story. Because, I mean, no matter, they are. They just are. It's such good, simple, but very well-constructed and well-crafted storytelling that you can enjoy it without, enjoying the Clone Wars. My wife loves the shows and is really into it and didn't watch the Clone Wars. I did make her watch a few episodes with Ahsoka prior to her showing up in season 2, but otherwise, she didn't watch the Clone Wars. So I definitely think you can enjoy it because the stories are so well told. But there is something to, having watched the Clone Wars, to really, for the excitement, especially obviously as the way this ends, there's, the reaction is gonna be a lot different if you're a fan of the Clone Wars and didn't expect it. So yeah, it's not must viewing, but I think it definitely is highly recommended. And Clone Wars is really good. I mean, it's just really, really well done. And so I think if you're a fan of this, you should watch it because it's just really good. And then it adds to the excitement when there is a cameo.
After Cobb Vanth receives a meeting from his old friend, the Mandalorian, he decides to call a town meeting to discuss helping out the potential Boba Fett alliance, I guess we would call it. When a stranger comes out of the desert to flip the script, did the appearance of notorious bounty hunter Cad Bane just swing the balance of power back to the Syndicate IG? And if Cobb makes it, maybe it might be time for some new armor?
Well, I don't know if it completely swings it, but it does add a serious wrinkle. I've watched a bunch of the Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff and seen Cad Bane doing stuff. And while he is an effective and pretty good bounty hunter, for whatever reason, he always tends to lose. So, he's in it as deep as his money will let him get. And then, if he feels like it's no longer a good value for his money, he'll just give up and leave. And this could be another one of those times when he gives up and leaves. But, he's an imposing character. And, I've seen some fan renditions of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly coming around for this. And this is truly especially on Tatooine, it just looks Western. Looks like old spaghetti Western type stuff. And, you've got, Mando, who's, just he's supposed to be a bad guy, but he's really a good guy. So, and then you've got Boba Fett, who is trying to be a good guy, but is a bad guy. And now Cad Bane, who is just really a bad guy and ugly as shit. So let's go. I'm really enjoying it and seeing Cad Bane, and I called it when I saw him out in the desert because I didn't have any idea he was coming. And I saw him out in the desert and then he got a little closer and I saw the hat and I'm like, did they fucking bring Cad Bane into this? That was the first thought that went through my head, and he got closer and he started talking and I saw the blue mouth and the teeth and everything. I'm like, oh my God, they did such a good job. And they really did. Cad Bane looks amazing in this as far as a live action rendition of a character that quite honestly looked very cartoony in the Clone Wars series. He was, kind of a very cartoonish looking character. So the fact that they put him in there and they did as well as they could with him, I'm a big fan. I think he might be part of the reason that we don't get full resolution of the conflict on Tatooine before the end of the season, and that it's going to go either into Mandalorian season 3 or Book of Boba Fett season 2 or wherever it's going to go. But I'm not sure he by himself brings enough firepower to do some other stuff. But seeing as how he's also been seen running with other bounty hunters and things at the time, he may not be by himself either.
I'll just add one thing with Cad Bane is he did generally tend to lose, but he was also going toe to toe with Jedi. So which there are times where he captured multiple Jedi, including I think Ahsoka and Obi-Wan and Anakin, and so he he's somebody who's formidable because, he plans. He's not force sensitive, but he can go toe to toe with the most powerful, beings in the galaxy. So he is a formidable foe. And I do hope that he doesn't just go out easy, because it does make this a really interesting fight now. Because it's like you've got somebody who is strategic and is smart and can fight and can shoot. And so I'm excited to see where they go. And it would be nice to see an ending that's not, where it gives us something to look forward to, whether it's Mandalorian season 3 or Book of Boba Fett season 2.
I call the final sequence Grogu's choice. Luke wisely presents the new Padawan with a choice to waddle the path of the Jedi or ride shotgun with Djarin. Ryan, what do you think he'll choose, and what are your thoughts on the episode and your rating?
I have to think he's going to choose the lightsaber. The interesting thing about this couple shows is I actually didn't want to see Grogu this episode, because I wanted that to be part of the arc for Mandalorian season 3, and I didn't want them to give us that so soon. And where they really surprised me was they gave us Grogu, which is great, but they didn't give us their reunion. And that's something that I think will be a big part of season 3. And so I feel like if he picks the armor right away, that really will eliminate a major, what I would think would be a major plot point and major storytelling point for season 3. So I do think that he'll pick the lightsaber and it will build towards a reunion for them. So I'm excited. It's funny because I don't know what I want him to choose, because you kind of want him to be back with Din Djarin, but and I also don't want him to die at the hands of Kylo Ren. So whatever it is I'm excited. These 2 episodes are 9.5, 10 range for me. I think they're really, for a show that's one of my favorite shows, in a long time. I'm speaking of The Mandalorian. Unfortunately, these 2 episodes have been an amazing extension and an amazing bridge to season 3. You could have given us these 2 episodes as the first 2 episodes of season 3, and I would be perfectly happy. So the fact that we got this just makes me all the more excited. And it's just they were both great, amazing storytelling to me, but also a lot of great fan service. They were alluding to the original trilogy, to the sequel trilogy, to the prequel trilogy, to the Clone Wars. The fact that there was in these episodes you thought you get everything, and then they give you Cad Bane at the end. It was just amazing. So, I really loved these 2 episodes. I think the only issue is I don't know how they relate to the Book of Boba Fett. And I think that's the only frustration is we might look back on we have one more episode, but we might look back on the season and think, well, wow, we got 2 amazing hours of, television, but we also got a show that just didn't really know what it wanted, where it was going. I think the show itself has been okay. I think before this, I gave it, up so far about a 7.5, but as a whole, I don't know what this is all. Why did we didn't really need those as part of the whole, and it's not a show about Boba Fett. And then I feel like you're rushing towards an end. So, I'm excited about the last episode, and I think bringing back Cad Bane does give them a formidable foe, and a foe that you can put a face to, instead of just like just put a bunch of faceless, baddies. Like we actually have a guy that we do know is badass and is tough. These 2 episodes, amazing. I could watch those alone, all day. And, if and when I do like a rewatch of seasons 1 and 2, especially before season 3, these 2 episodes will be added to my rewatch just because I think it's essential viewing for The Mandalorian. So a long way to say, I love the episodes, not quite sure how they fit into the larger, to the whole unit that is the Book of Boba Fett.
I really enjoyed the episodes too. And what I really likened to it is I'm thinking back to season 1 of The Mandalorian. And right toward the end of that season, who showed up but Moff Gideon, the big bad, right? And now here toward the end of this season of the Book of Boba Fett, who shows up but Cad Bane? Now that's the new big bad. Although I still think the Hutts are still out there waiting for something to play out so they know who they have to send their forces against. So there's even more potential big bad. But then they did the same thing in Mandalorian season 2 with Ahsoka going, tell me where Grand Admiral Thrawn is. So there's even more big bads out there running around. The things that they're doing with these episodes are just pure candy to a Star Wars nerd like me. I really enjoy it. I'm having a great time watching it. And I think I've watched each episode at least twice now. I'm about to probably watch the latest one a third time just because I liked it so much. And I was right with Ryan, about 7.5 for the first 5 episodes, but these last 2 are taking that congregate number and moving it up significantly. So seasons so far, I'm probably at a 9. These last 2 episodes, I'm probably 9.5 on each one. And the reason I'm not going 10 is because I think that's going to be a 10 on this final episode. I'm super excited. I think there's a lot of things they could do, and I have no idea which way they're going to do it. The one thing I wish they would have done, maybe you don't let Mando see Grogu. Maybe you don't let that happen because of the whole attachment thing, and he needs to make his decisions and not have that attachment to fight with. But we saw the trouble that Mando was having with the Darksaber, and I wish Luke would have just told him how he needs to handle a lightsaber and how you need to have your feelings focused if you're going to do it, because I think that's the problem with him wielding that ancient lightsaber.
Yeah, as much as I like Mando and the baby Grogu, running around together, I think it's kind of time that comes to an end, mostly because I really want a lot more Luke Skywalker in my life. I want to see Grogu go on and become a Jedi, and I want those last 3 films to just kind of be rubbed out of canon, and maybe we do a new story or set of TV shows to gloss over all that alternate universe, whatever it takes. For now, these 2 shows are absolutely joined at the hip, and anybody that doesn't like it, well, there's plenty of things on Netflix. There's plenty of things on Hulu. There's so much content out there. Don't watch things you don't like. If you can't stand the way they're doing things, or you don't like the characters or storyline, just go do something else. There's going to be another show and another show after that you'll get the opportunity to jump back into the Star Wars universe. I don't see it as a slight to Boba Fett. I love The Mandalorian in the episodes. I've enjoyed them all, but they're definitely, these last 2 have been a 9 for me. And I can't wait to discuss the finale because there's just so many balls in the air, and I just don't know how all of this is going to play out. I'm getting a feeling that we're probably looking at a cliffhanger, and it's going to be addressed in a few months in The Mandalorian Season 3. I'm totally here for Luke and Grogu. You should have seen the look on my wife's face when I told her, I don't think he's going to be in the Boba Fett show, but he'll probably be back in Mandalorian. She was super sad, so that really excited her that he showed up. She absolutely loves that little guy. So that about wraps it up. I'm going to give these both a 9. We'll be back next week to kind of discuss the finale and a few other things. We'll probably get to I think we're going to do Peacemaker, and then we're going to get to Spider-Man and probably talk Ozark the week after that. So join us next week, and IG.
Until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.